With the Hurricanes off Monday and Tuesday, let's talk a little early predictions or reasons why certain Hurricanes should be going to the Olympics in February. And also, the vibes very high in Carolina during their 4-game winning streak.
You're Locked On Hurricanes, your daily podcast on the Carolina Hurricanes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Tuesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. I'm your host, Zach Martin. I'm the credentialed Carolina Hurricanes beat writer over at the Hockey Writers, also the co-host of the Surgecast, which is a weekly Carolina Hurricanes podcast, along with all my duties here at Locked On Hurricanes. On today's show, we're going to take a look at why Seth Jarvis has a really strong case to make Hockey Canada for the Winter Olympics that are going to be in Italy in February. Also talking about why Jaccob Slavin, even while missing games this year, still has a legitimate shot, I believe, to make it for USA Hockey as well. And then we're going to look at the vibes of the Carolina Hurricanes during their 4-game winning streak, which includes back-to-back-to-back wins in a shootout. But before we jump into all of that, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. Now, with the Winter Olympics looming less than 60 days away, outside of the drama of will the ice be ready, on top of the fact that the dimensions are about 3 feet shorter from end to end, going north-south than the usual NHL rinks. It'll be very interesting to see how all that plays out, but besides all that drama, we already know that Sebastian Aho is going for Team Finland to the Olympics. We got Fredrik Andersen and Nikolai Ehlers going for Denmark as well. Those are kind of like your 3 main locks for the Carolina Hurricanes, at least going to the Olympics. The one that I would say going into the season was a pretty surefire lock in Jaccob Slavin, which we'll talk about later in segment 2. But the one that is bringing up a lot of debate for hockey fans that are looking at the Canadian team, I think on a broader scope, is looking at, a roster that some reason doesn't include Seth Jarvis. And I know you guys this is a Carolina Hurricanes podcast. Obviously, we're going to talk about Seth Jarvis, but there's some legitimate reasons why he should be, I believe, on the Hockey Canada Olympic team going to Italy in February. And Trip Tracy said it too on the broadcast over the weekend against Philadelphia. Seth Jarvis did a lot of things for the Carolina Hurricanes that I think any team would love to have on their roster. I mean, he played pretty well at the Four Nations. Yes, he sat for a game as a healthy scratch, but he was one of the 23 guys that made it to that roster, and he played really well. Great 200-foot game, two-way style, could play a power play, penalty kill, and 5-on-5. Yeah, he was more so bottom 6. Of course, Canada is a very stacked team, but when you look at what Seth Jarvis has done this year for the Carolina Hurricanes already, and you're talking him playing in 32 games, I think is more than well enough to prove that he has got the juice to make Team Canada's roster. Because you look at the goals, you got Nathan McKinnon leading the way with 26 and Morgan Geekie at 22, but Seth Jarvis is tied for 6th with 18 goals, and that's with Brad Marchand, Connor McDavid, and Brandon Hagel. Yes, Connor McDavid, who's played one more game than Seth Jarvis, has the same amount of goals. No, yes, the points are a big discrepancy difference with the fact that, McDavid's got 52 points and Jarvis has 26. And the one name that everyone keeps throwing out of, who should possibly be over Jarvis is Tom Wilson, because he has 17 goals and 32 points as a plus 17. I can see why some people would say that. But when you look at the overall impact of what Jarvis has done for the Hurricanes, I mean, you're talking about a guy who is tied for first for all Canadian hockey players with 2 shorthanded goals, and the fact that he has 4 game winners. I mean, that's a pretty dang impressive stat for the fact that you're talking about he's tied with Brandon Hagel for 4th for all Canadians, and they're only behind Ryan O'Reilly, Sam Reinhart, and Dylan Guenther. Like I said, shorthanded wise, he's got 2 tied with, he's got the 2 with, Ryan McLeod and Dawson Mercer and John Gabriel Pagel. The only guy who has 1 more shorthanded goal is Sam Reinhart. Shorthanded points, he still has 2, but it's still top 10 for all Canadian hockey players. That's what these stats are looking at. Even point per game for all Canadian players, you're still talking about Seth Jarvis, who's tied for 31st with Jacob Chicker and .81. Like, it's still pretty impressive when you look at a lot of these other guys like Marner, Nugent Hopkins, Morgan Geekie, guys who are well over a point per game, with how their play style is a little bit different than compared to what Carolina has. But like I said, with Seth Jarvis, he brings a lot to a team that's more than just, goals and assists. You're talking about power play goals. He's got the 1, but he's effective on the power play. You're talking him and Sebastian Aho are an absolute dynamo pairing on the shorthand. Like, he got shorthanded goals like crazy. He had 5 last year. He's already got a couple this year. Wins faceoffs. Kills penalties pretty well. His top power play in it, top line. There's a lot more components of what Seth Jarvis can do. He's got the hands. He's got the physicality. It wouldn't make sense to me for a guy like him to make the 4 Nations roster, play well, be one of the top 23 Canadian guys to play on that team, have a great season when you're talking top 10 and you're tied for 6th in the league in goals. Yeah, his maybe assists are a little bit down, but you're still talking about a guy who's playing very well to a standard where he's almost a point per game, but still doing all the things that are necessary in more than just one aspect of the game. He's not just, he's only power play or he's only top line. Like, no, it's top line, power play, penalty kill. Any type of facet of the game that you need him for, that's what Seth Jarvis does. And he brings his speed and he uses more than his size. Like, he is not afraid to throw the body around and do what he needs to do. So if you're looking at someone who I believe should be on Hockey Canada's Olympic roster, it's got to be Seth Jarvis. And Tracy said it perfectly over the weekend. It's pretty hard to leave a guy like Jarvis out because, yeah, you can have guys like a Tom Wilson or whoever join the roster and be like, okay, we need to bring some physicality in the end, you can score. But there's also other guys too where it's like, but what Seth has done and his skill set around the goal scoring, around the points, is bring a type of game that shuts down a lot of other teams' best players, and he can do it at any point. Like, he's played first line, second line, third line. Like, you can put him on any line, and he's a spark plug. He's a Swiss Army knife. And I think if you're looking at Canada, they want to have a guy that they can throw in there in any situation. I think Jarvis is one of those guys, and you see his stock rise over the last few years. And I think it doesn't make sense for when you look at it of why not him? Why not have a Seth Jarvis on your Olympic roster when he's already shown you at 4 Nations that he can be effective if they properly use him correctly and, use him in certain situations the right way. And, he's done a lot this season for the Carolina Hurricanes. Like, he had 4 game-winning goals in the first 5 games. Like, he's doubled in goals on the Hurricanes. He's almost a point per game guy just by goal totals. That's how crazy he's playing right now. So it's just, when you look at what he's done, I think for Jarvis, it just makes sense. Like, yeah, he's 6 points, fewer compared to his games that he's played, 26 points in 32 games, but he's doing a lot of this with, just a tad under 19 minutes per game. But he's doing it just at a shooting percentage of a 17.6. He's 102 shots already. Like, that's some pretty good numbers. That's over guys like Bo Horvat, who like a 17.1 shooting percentage. Or, guys like Macklin Celebrini, 16.8, Dylan Guenther, 13.6. Like, his shot numbers are really good. And like I said, he's someone who plays very effectively. So if you're looking at guys on, that should be on Team Canada, I think Seth Jarvis is definitely the conversation why I think he should be there. It is just what he's done for 4 Nations, what he's done for the Hurricanes this year. I don't see why you would leave a guy like that off the roster. But we'll see how it works out. I know they're looking at New Year's Eve as the announcement date. So hopefully we see Seth Jarvis' name there for Hockey Canada. Now, talking about Canada, let's move over to the U.S. and talk about Jaccob Slavin. We'll do that here in a second on a Tuesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. NFL Sundays move fast, one big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what making live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you reacted to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets on as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift. A receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. FanDuel will let you jump into the moment. Live spreads and money lines adjust instantly. Player props update as guys heat up. You can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. Welcome back to segment 2 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. Now, we talked about Seth Jarvis and making the team, why he should be able to make, why I believe he should be making Team Canada. Now we're going to move on to looking at the USA team and talking about Jaccob Slavin, because when you look at the situation with the defenseman and the fact that Jaccob Slavin, unfortunately for me, he was behind the 8 ball all season. Missed 30 games. Point totals are, I mean, you're talking about a guy who's doesn't really have any points this season, unfortunately. But like I said, you can't blame the guy for missing the last 30 games of the season. And now he's officially back. He's only played, 3 total games. Like, what can you really do about that? And, him and Finn Sword are the 2 guys that have played less than 5 that haven't scored a point. Justin Robineau's got a point. But nothing you do about Jaccob Slavin. But you look at the rest of the defense around the league, yeah, you're going to be talking about Zach Werenski, is Lane Hudson going to be there? Adam Fox, John Carlson, Quinn Hughes, Jake Sanderson, those type of guys, Brock Faber, Charlie McAvoy. A lot of good names. And I think it's going to be a harder list to crack. The crazy part is, too, we should be really talking about Shayne Gostisbhere. But I've heard not a lot of conversations surrounding a guy who is tied for 4th in the league in points with John Carlson, but you hear John Carlson's name pop up, and Shayne Gostisbehere's got a 1.04 points per game. And the fact that he's played 23, he's got 24 points in 23 games. He's a plus 11. Like, his plus 11 is 7th in the AHL behind, Matt Rory is a plus 21 and Sam Malinsky plus 16 and those guys. But, are you going to hear them? That's the big question, because you look at goals, points per game for NHL defensemen of Americans. Shayne Gostisbehere leads the league. He leads American defensemen in points per game 1.04. Zach Werenski's 0.103, and then some guy named Marshall Warren from the Islanders has played 2 games, has got 100. But if you're looking at guys who have actually played over 27 games, about over 20 games, Shayne Gostisbehere leads the entire American defensive corps in doing that. But like I said, you're going to hear about Fox and Hughes, Werenski, and Sanderson, and nothing wrong with that for those guys. But Shayne Gostisbehere, I believe, should be there. But you look at Jaccob Slavin, even though he's been out, I still even think Jaccob Slavin should at least be still in consideration, because you're talking about a guy who, from what Team USA saw at 4 Nations, was a big shutdown factor, and he was paired with Brock Faber. Like, yeah, despite the fact that he's missed 30 games, you still want a guy like Jaccob Slavin on that blue line. More so, especially we got the stacked 4 core that Canada is going to bring. What's Finland going to bring? What's Sweden going to bring? A lot of these teams, Czechia, there's going to be a lot of good teams that are going to be coming to the Olympics, and they're going to bring all their big boys. And we're talking not just NHLers, we're talking guys who are over in Europe. Like, these are going to be a little bit more different rosters than what we saw from 4 Nations. Like, Well, let's also forget Leon Draisaitl and the Germans are going to be there. Like, there's going to be a lot of guys that never didn't get a chance to play in Four Nations are going to be playing in the Olympics. So you're going to be really, if you're at USA, you really have to be ready. I think if you want to add a guy who's a good shutdown defenseman that you saw at Four Nations play really well. Guys missed games this year due to injury, but you got to bring Jaccob Slavin. So I think Slavin is a guy that you really have to bring, and I would love to say that you should be able to bring Shayne Gostisbhere too, but unfortunately, just from how it looks, I've heard nothing on Shayne Gostisbhere making Team USA, and that's almost a travesty for the fact, like I say, he's over a point per game, and he leads All-American defensemen in points per game, but you hardly hear him. That's the crazy part. The only guy that is on the radar for the Hurricanes is Jaccob Slavin. Like I said, he's missed 30 games. So does that put him behind the 8 ball? Does that make Team Hockey? Does that make USA Hockey go, well, it would be great to have him, but he hasn't played a lot this year. Yeah, he's going to have like the back half in December and all of January. Is that going to be enough? And I think for Jaccob Slavin, I think it would be enough. It's going to be an uphill battle. But if USA Hockey wants to bring a good shutdown defenseman that they've already seen do it on the national stage, yeah, it's Four Nations, but that's still a guy you would love to have being able to slide into your lineup. Maybe he is next to a Brock Faber, or maybe he's next to Zach Werenski or whoever. You can put him with whatever offensive guy you want, or like it's already, it is Brock. That's still a good pairing to have. So it makes sense if you want to have a good guy like Slavin in the lineup, you should be able to bring him to Italy. And, I guess you guys see how the rest of December goes and how January goes before you lead up into that long break in February where you go over to, Milan and all that and play the Olympics. So it should be very interesting to see how it works out for Slavin. Like I said, I would love to see Slavin go because he's definitely deserved it. It sucks that he's been out, like the outside of, the Sunday game, he's missed the last 30. And, that puts him behind the, in a tough spots where it's a really short window to jump a bunch of guys who've played 28, 29, 30 games already this season that have a little bit more of a leg up on him because, like I said, Slavin's got 0 points, but he's only played 3 games. So it should be interesting to see how that plays out. And like I said, by proxy, why not Shayne Gostisbhere? Why not throw Shane's name in the hat? He's done a lot for the Hurricanes. He's been their offensive guy. He's been a big help to that blue line. Yeah, he's been hurt a couple times. He's missed some games, but like I say, he's 24 points in 23 games. Leads all of American defensemen in that category, points per game at 1.04, but you just hear 0 about him unless you're in Carolina. And that's typically, unfortunately, how it goes. Even Zach Werenski and Columbus, you don't really hear them very much unless they're on national TV. It's just you hear the same few guys because they're just whatever the marketability is just makes more sense for them. Created guys like Slavin or Werenski or whoever that should be kind of talked about more. And even, like I said, Shayne Gostisbhere. Gostisbehere's having over a point per game season, but you don't really hear a whole lot about him unless you guys hear on this podcast or you listen to the broadcast for the Hurricanes and, hopefully other people outside of Raleigh are listening, fans of the team. But I think, like I said, outside of, that you're going to get Ehlers and Anderson there, you're going to get Aho in the Olympics. The big question marks right now is Jarvis and Slavin going to make it there. And even Shayne Gostisbhere. I think Shayne Gostisbhere has earned some consideration, but will they make it? I guess only time will tell. And, it'd be great to have, 3 more guys. So you can have 6 Hurricanes going to the Olympics, but it really just depends on how these teams kind of view them, and hopefully they kind of break through despite, the fact that Slave has missed 30 games or, Seth Jarvis is going up against a very stacked Canadian roster. I guess we'll see when that time comes. But let me know in the comments what you think. Do you think that Jarvis, Slavin, and Gostisbhere should be going? Or do you think it's just Jarvis and Slavin? Or do you think maybe it's just Jarvis? But let me know what you guys think in the comments if you're on YouTube. If you're on social media, hit me up at OneTrue or if you are part of our Everydayers Discord, let me know in there as well. I want to get everyone's thoughts on what's going on with, do we see 1, 2, or 3 more guys go with the guys we already know they're going to the Olympics. But enough about that. Let's talk about the vibes that surround the Carolina Hurricanes. So stick around and we'll do that here in a second on a Tuesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job posted on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs puts your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. We've all been in that spot where you needed to hire someone like yesterday, the pressure's on, and every day without the right person is a setback. That's exactly when Indeed sponsored jobs comes in handy. They make sure your post is seen by the right candidates right now. Now you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Well, Indeed is all you need. Thank you for making Locked On Hurricanes your first listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. You already live your team every day. Now take up to another level and go ad-free. Join the Everydayer Club today and get Locked On Hurricanes with no interruptions, members-only Discord access, and more. All for just $5 a month or $50 a year. Go check out the link in the show notes to learn more. Welcome back to segment 3 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. All right, so we talked about Seth Jarvis for Hockey Canada, kind of talked about Jaccob Slavin and a little bit of Shayne Gostisbhere for USA Hockey, but now let's check out the vibes for the Carolina Hurricanes over the last 4 games and where they kind of at overall in the league. You're talking about a team who, like I said, on a 4-game heater, they've beat Washington, in Philadelphia twice, in 3 straight games in the shootout. And from Walt Ruff, I thought this is a very awesome stat when you kind of think about what they've done over the last few games. Walt Ruff said, per NHL stats, this marks the first time in Hurricanes history that the team has won 3 straight games via a shootout. That's pretty remarkable for the fact that you look at a team that has really found a way to dig deep and battle through some adversity to go get some extra wins. Because when you really look at it, you're talking about teams on a 4-game heater. You're still within somewhat striking distance of Dallas, who's 5 points ahead, but Carolina's 2 games in hand on Dallas. And the fact, too, is that they're still 9 back of Colorado. Yes, points are, they play the same amount of games, and 9 points seems a lot, especially when you look at a Colorado Avalanche team. That's a plus 54 goal differential, and they're 13-0-2 at home. And somehow they're surprisingly 0-4 in shootouts, but I digress. But the Hurricanes are still in a good spot. Yeah, you still got the Minnesota Wild on your heels. They've won 4 straight, but they've played 1 more game, and you got a point over them. You got 3 points over Vegas, but Vegas has a game in hand, and they've won 2 straight. But you're still talking about a team who's 5th in the entire NHL, or third in the entire NHL. They're in the top 5. They're the only Eastern Conference team in the top 5. Like I said, you got Colorado, Dallas, Minnesota, Vegas. You got 3 Central teams and 1 in the Pacific. And Vegas is tied with the Islanders, who've played 33 games, and Anaheim, who's played 33 games as well. And they also have 41 points. So Vegas, by points percentage, is better because they have 2 games in hand. After that, you're talking about Washington in 8th with 40, Tampa 39, and they're tied with Detroit, who's in 10th with 39 points. So you're talking not a lot of Eastern Conference teams. Like, you have a good some mix of 5 Eastern Conference, 5 in the West in terms of your top 10 in the league. But the Hurricanes have 3 points in the hand on the next Eastern Conference team, and that's with the game in hand. After that, you're talking 4 difference with the Capitals, 5 difference to Tampa and Detroit. And then you got Philadelphia in 11th. So the point being is the Hurricanes are being able to do what they can do. And this run that they're on right now, after that crazy loss to the Sharks, they've ripped 4 straight off. They've given themselves a little bit of a buffer, not just on the Metro, but on the Eastern Conference as a whole. And they're the 3rd best team in the entire AHL, and that's just with getting Jaccob Slavin back on Sunday. And that's just with a blue line that was decimated for a good part of the season. And the fact that you also had Peter Kochetkov out for multiple games. Frederick Anderson's kind of having an up-and-down season. but you're still getting the job done. And now you got the roster back. Pretty much everyone's back. So when you really look at it, hopefully this is kind of a stretch run where the Hurricanes start taking off, because you put yourself into a good spot now to where you were battling adversity for the first 32 games of the season. You just got Jaccob Slavin back after missing the last, he's missed 30 games this year. And now he's back. You've had to go to the shootout 3 times in a row, but you dug deep and got the wins, and that's all you really ask for, because they don't ask how, they ask how many. And right now the Carolina Hurricanes are 21-9-2, 44 points, a .688 points percentage, a goal differential of +18, 11-5-1 at home, 10-4-1 on the road, 4-1 in the shootouts. They've won the last 3, 7-3 in their last 10, and they've won 4 straight. Like, compared to what we saw last year for the road record, which was just abysmal the entire way, they're doing really good on the road right now. And once again, they're doing the business at home. Yes, they have the same amount of wins at home as Anaheim, Minnesota, and Dallas, but that's still pretty dang good for the fact that they're still within the thick of that, within the top group. Even Boston's won 11 games at home, which is crazy to think about. But then, of course, like I said, you got Colorado's where you got 13 wins at home. Colorado is they're just running through everyone except for the Hurricanes, because the Hurricanes did beat them, and that was a crazy game of itself. But I digress on the fact that vibes-wise, the Hurricanes are in a good spot, and they're only going to get better because, like I said, you get Jaccob Slavin back. You got Peter back. Hopefully, his injury woes kind of end. You got the magic run of Bussy, what he's been doing. 9 straight wins, 11-1 on the season. He's getting a lot more starts, and he's really putting himself in a position where it's kind of him and Piotr as the 1-2 punch right now. And, maybe they're just giving Freddie some extra time to kind of collect and figure out what's going on there. Maybe they'll give him some starts here and there. But, Brandon Bussy's held the fort down. He's gotten you 22 extra points on the season, which is exactly half of what you had. Out of the 44 points for the Hurricanes, Brandon Bussy's collected 22 because he's got 11 wins. That's pretty dang impressive, to where if Bussy's in the crease, he's gotten you half your points on the season with his 11 wins, and he's gotten 1 regulation loss against Dallas. And the thing against Dallas, a couple of those goals were friendly fire. So even then, if it wasn't for the puck going off a stick or a glove, that game could be different too. We could still be talking about an even more impressive record, but even then, 11-1 is still good. Like, Brandon Bussy's tied with Cam Ward, all time in a winning streak in a season. If he wins his next one, he'll have a record. He'll be the first goalie in Hurricanes history to win 10 straight games, and he will be on a like. That's just crazy to think about. He'll have 10 straight wins and he'd be 12-1. Look, knock on wood that it works out though. But my point still stands is he's done a lot for the Hurricanes. The vibes are really high. Like I said, you go and sweep the weekend. You win 3 games in 4 days all in the shootout, but you're just stacking wins on stacking wins. That's all you can ask for. You just keep stacking wins, and that's what you're looking at for the Hurricanes. And you know what? I bet these 2 days off are pretty nice for the guys because they definitely deserve it. That's a lot of hockey, and the thing is, we got a lot more hockey coming the way too, especially on Wednesday night where the Hurricanes, they're taking on the Nashville Predators. We're right back into the thick of things again, because now you got more games that they have to get through. Nashville, they're on the road Wednesday. Friday, they're in Florida. Saturday, Dallas. You have another 3 games in 4 days again. And then guess what? 3 days later, turn right back around and play Florida. So you have a run where you're playing Florida teams 3 times in a row, 19th, 20th, and 23rd. And in front of that, you've got Nashville on the 17th. So a lot more still to go for the Carolina Hurricanes. But as of right now, vibes are higher and they're playing really great hockey. But guys, until then, this will be the Tuesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Thank you for tuning in and making sure that you subscribe and follow the podcast where we get your latest episodes. Also, did Locked On Hurricanes make your Spotify Wrapped? Prove it on social media to secure a free month of our brand new Everydayer Club. Just tag our national Locked On Podcast Network account on any social platform and we'll drop you a code. Be one of the first to join the Everydayer Club to get your favorite show ad-free and exclusive access to the members-only Discord channel. For those of you on video, we send you to the first ever 24/7 national Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. On audio, make sure your second listen is the AHL Game Night on Locked On AHL. If you want to keep up with me, I'm One True Zach on X. The podcast is LO_Hurricanes. I'm also on Blue Sky, the Zachary Martin. Where if you click the link to my bio, you can find all my random content at thehockeywriters.com. If you want to check out my other podcasts, it's the Surgecast on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. For Locked On Hurricanes, we're on Spotify, Google, Apple, iHeartRadio, wherever you listen to your podcast. Make sure to leave a 5-star rating and review because I might just read it on the show. For YouTube, it's Locked On Hurricanes. Subscribe, hit the bell notification so you don't miss the show. Hit the thumbs up. Let me know if you like the show as well. Share with other Keniacs. We have everydayers just like you. But hope everyone enjoyed the Tuesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Enjoy your Tuesday. And until next time, as always, let's go Canes.